Welcome to another episode of the Rugby Bits podcast. Sorry for the last 2 weeks. The last week we were in radio silent. I think trying to balance all our schedules and Tala obviously replying to us in Italian does make it impossible for the group. We don't know whether he's in or not on certain weeks. Shark is either fighting whales in the sea or is I'm running around covering cricket games. So it's been a hectic time for the boys at Rugby Bits. Jared, we still can't get through to his agent, but we've got into normal now. I think mid Feb is almost a rugby time. It's an exciting time as well. I was looking at the schedule: Six Nations in full flow, URC in full flow, Super Rugby starts soon, Varsity Cup starts soon. So I think the rugby season in South Africa sort of gets into full flow now in the middle of Feb. But I'm not alone. I'm joined by Sharky and Tala. Boys, how you guys doing?
Fantastic. It's so good to chat again. I missed everyone last week. It would have been so great to chat last week, but I literally couldn't. I was also bouncing on the other show. Talk about Wales. It's been busy with Wales, and it's been busy with being on the sea and rugby. But I won't bore you with that.
Yeah, I'm doing well, I guess. Settled in and learning some Italian or finding out how the commentators say some of the English names on Sky Sports Italy, which has been quite entertaining. So I've been getting to know what you can expect, like when you're watching rugby on this side of the world, and looking forward to discussing the last 2 weeks of the Six Nations.
I just love the fact that Tala, it's that now that you're in Italy, is the fact that you're just solely relying on Italy to play well. Because if Italy doesn't play well, they might just shut down the rugby channels. I don't know what you're gonna watch.
A lot of Syria.
Yeah, just a lot of Syria. I'm surprised you don't have a side yet, but we're gonna get cracking with some news. I think the biggest news last week is, well, Joe Schmidt extends his coaching reign to the end of the championship as the Wallabies look for another new coach. I mean, Sharky, if you're a Wallabies fan, I think obviously it seemed like they turned in the corner with Joe Schmidt. Obviously, his initial contract was up until the Rugby Championship, and he said that he's looking obviously end of the Alliance tour, but the championship starting so soon, and straight into a 2 week tour here to South Africa, that it made sense for him to sort of go into the end of the championship. And obviously, we know that he's got he's got big family issues with the son that's fighting epilepsy, and so that's why he left the Ireland job, and now obviously he would like to spend more time at home. Shock, if you're a Wallaby fan, I'm sure by now you want a coach to last a lot more than a year. Like I think that's first prize.
Yeah. The thing is both the last two coaches or the coaches that have lasted a year each has been so polarizing as well. You know, the one you couldn't get rid of soon enough, and this guy, Joe Schmidt, you'd sign him on a 15-year deal tomorrow if you got the opportunity. So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. Emotionally, the Wallaby fans must be in a very, very weird space. Um, Probably the most important thing now is you're hoping that they're going to employ a head coach internally and Joe Schmidt can work with him. The talk is that Joe Schmidt will be still there's a very good chance of him still being involved moving forward, but not as head coach. So maybe he'll just consult and stuff like that. You kind of want a little bit of succession planning now because even I'd like to think even if it was Eddie Jones right now, you kind of been like you need to be having the same conversations. You can't be chopping and changing the year of the Lions tour, which obviously Joe Schmidt's going to be there for, and then you want to build on that because to be fair, it seems like they're going in the right-ish direction. Super Rugby starts this weekend, so that conversation could end very quickly when the Highlanders thump the Waratahs. I think that's the first Australian team playing this season. But it's tough for them, and there's a talk of a certain Ronan O'Gara interested in the role now. That would be fun. There would be no succession planning there at all, but you'd probably take him if you got a chance.
And and Tala, well, number one, I think the Wallabies' issues was just don't if they could go back 2 years ago, just don't sack Dave Rennie after a 3 year project. and then just almost go back 2 years. And Tala, obviously, the big word is that Ron O'Gara is interested in the job, but a part of me thinks this is Dave McKellar's job in waiting, depending on how the Waratahs do in
Yeah.
Super Rugby. Um, Tala, who would you like to see having having the job? Do you think they'll go back getting a Australian coach in after all? I mean, they've got Eddie and then Joe Schmidt, or do you think they'll go, maybe go to the outside, a Ron O'Gara or Johan van Graan, for example, Johan van Graan or Franco Smith? I mean, I think there's quite a few young coaches who would really relish the Wallaby job.
So it sounded like from the press release that Joe Schmidt, like Sean said, basically said he would like to stay involved with the Wallabies if the new coach allows him to. And I think that's a big indicator that at least that his front runner or the front runner maybe is that it's Les Kiss, the Reds coach, because he's worked with him, or at least he's worked in the Irish system while Joe Schmidt was there. So I think that's some interaction there. And he's been sort of like in and out of Australian rugby. So it's not like someone that's just coming from a, sort of a narrow experience of, the game of rugby in the country. So I don't know if there's too much difference, in my opinion, between Les Kiss and Dan McKellar. I think they all, and even Stephen Larkham, I think they all have pretty much similar sort of background experience in coaching. Larkham's probably the least experienced coach, but they've been coaching for 15 plus years. They coached both in Australia and outside of Australia, and I think that's what the Wallabies need if they're going to pick someone Australian, is pick someone that has that coaching experience and coaching pedigree from around the world, like Schmidt has at the moment, I should say. Rog or any other non-Australian coach, I think it kind of reminds me of going for Robbie Deans in 2008, where obviously you have a successful coach at super level or at club level. Does that mean they're always going to be successful coaches in international level? We don't know. I mean, even with Scott Robertson, it definitely took him a little bit more time than we thought for him to get going with the All Blacks. So, it's not a done deal that because Ron O'Gara's won Champions Cups and everything, that he would be successful as well. So, I mean, I would love it because, I think all of us on this pod really think highly of Rogers' coaching, his rugby brain. He was commentating, I think, for the BBC this weekend on the Scotland Ireland game, and everyone always raves about his rugby knowledge and the way that he can explain the game. So he'd be great. It's just a matter of is Australia willing to be patient enough with a new coach where they kind of have to hit the ground running, because regardless of what happens after the Lions, they have less than 2 years basically until the Rugby World Cup, which they're hosting. And I think the Wallabies would want at least to try and get to the last week and get to the semi-finals and maybe more if whoever comes in. So I guess it's either continuity with some of the super coaches or going off the picture with Ron O'Gara. I mean, another name I'd throw into a hat is Franco Smith, if you can convince him to leave club rugby. But it seems like even for Scotland, like those rumours are that he likes Glasgow, he likes coaching day to day instead of coaching on and off like you would in international rugby.
I absolutely love that Franco Smith call. I I think getting a South African coach in, even Johan van Graan, someone who was involved in Super Rugby, I think would be great because there's still that little bit of vibe there. Very interesting. I'd like to discuss it, but it's probably more a rhetorical question than anything else. But Ronan O'Gara's, you remember his whole big thing about how he makes La Rochelle work is like everyone's responsible for themselves. The guys come back late and it's like from holidays or something. It's okay. He's got a very different outlook. Do you think that that's gonna? Do you think the Wallabies need a little bit more disciplined coach, which is ironic, or not disciplined, someone that kind of sets boundaries and has very clear setup of roles and responsibilities and what's expected of you? Because there's no doubt about it that would have been there when Eddie Jones was there. Like he's quite hectic on that. It's very much like Jake White in that like everyone must work a full day and blah blah blah. So I don't
And Joe
know.
Schmidt, to be fair.
Sorry.
I was saying, and Joe Schmidt, to be fair, he's quite set and
Yes,
disciplined, have an
yes, I
exact game
suppose.
plan. I don't think he takes any crap. He just does it in
No.
a more emotional, intelligent way than
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Eddie Jones does it.
And with a whip. So yeah, that's very interesting. Runner guys definitely got a very different approach to what they normally have.
What I think is the interesting thing for the Wallabies and these jobs. I mean, I think you've got probably a very good pool of coaches who are available, and I still think the Wallaby job is an exciting job. I know obviously there's issues with players going overseas and money. I think obviously like Elen Iguitar could go overseas, but I think they'll make a way for him to continue playing for the Wallabies. And I know there's a bit of cash that's been pumped into the Wallabies now, obviously with the Lions who's coming in the World Cup. But I still think the players that we saw with a glimpse of what Joe Schmidt had done at the end of year tour, and I think obviously now it's an exciting time in Australian rugby as they're building on it. I do think that the Rays and the Tars are going to have a good Super Rugby seasons. I think there's, especially the Waratahs, I think they're very exciting with all the additions they have. But I think with Ron O'Gara, I think that Sharky, what you say about it, I think it could be something different for Wallabies in terms of the culture that he'll bring. I think that puts him in any job as a front runner because you look at what he's done at La Rochelle and you talk about players policing themselves. Maybe I think with the Wallabies it is a new generation. It's no longer the James O'Connors and the guys. I mean, Cody Beale probably still trying to get a Wallaby cap. They were running around back in those days who needed to probably be to be policed. But I think with this new generation of players, this young group of players, maybe someone like Raj could be what they need. But I wouldn't be surprised. Like Tony, you mentioned someone like Les Kiss coming in or Dave McKellar. I think they're going to stay internally, especially with Joe Schmidt sort of coming in and just. I think they're going to want to keep the momentum that Joe has sort of picked, has sort of created at the end of last year. I think Super Rugby is a massive one for Australia. I think they need at least two sides doing well, maybe one side sneaking to a semi-final, to keep the momentum going into the Lions tour. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a. I think it's going to be a local coach. I think they're going to stick with someone from Australia. But talking about local coaches, our favorite coach who loves Twitter, X, Rassie Erasmus had his Twitter fingers ready on Sunday after the Six Nations, and he talked about the big contentious point of ball in play, which is World Rugby's favorite thing to do. I swear World Rugby probably they dream of 75 minutes of ball in play. If they could have that right, that would be their dream. But Rassie said 80, England vs France had 83 kicks in play, 15 scrums, and only 36 minutes of ball in play. It was one of the more exciting games in the Six Nations in a while. I don't think the shape of the game can be judged always on stats. If you don't watch the game, most will say those numbers won't create excitement. Rugby's in a great shape at the moment, in my opinion. Lacquer. I think, Tyler, in terms of rugby birth part, he's preaching to us as the choir. Like, this ball in play thing that World Rugby is on, it's like I sometimes think like I don't know what their ideal number is. I think it's World Rugby and Ian Foster. They're the ones leading the ball, and John Coe, and they're leading the ball in play charge. Like you watch a game like Saturday's game, England France, and you think to yourself, like like you can still have great games with set piece and scrums. They can still play a massive role in scrums and mauls. Like it doesn't always have to be just this running rugby of 45 minutes of ball in play time.
Yeah, look, we know that that's just been such a misguided um, attempt by World Rugby to try and seemingly make the game more exciting. Like, there's no correlation between there being more ball and play time and the game being more exciting. With Saturday's game in particular, there were six players that had two or more clean break or two clean breaks, at least two clean breaks each. And all six players are backline players. So basically, it was the two wings for England and then 13 and the back three for France. All had at least two clean breaks. Like, that was a helter skelter game, and it was in the rain. It was not the best conditions, and obviously, clearly, England especially was trying to kick as much as possible, trying to target France, and probably the one big weakness they have with dealing with the high ball. And it was a really really good high quality game at times. So yeah, it is definitely such a misguided thing. Yeah, it's definitely not the most controversial thing Rassie Rasmus has said on Twitter, or done on Twitter. So yeah, I think literally 90% of rugby fans agree. It's maybe our friends down south in Australia and New Zealand that, I don't know, always want to compare international rugby or rugby union to rugby league, and that's just, they have to sort of, I think rugby fans on that side of the world have to sort of make that, they have to have that moment with themselves to really, come to reckoning of, this game is different from that game, and that's fine. If you enjoy one more than the other, that's also fine. Go watch the one more than you enjoy than the other. That is also completely okay. But the answer for rugby isn't trying to make it more like rugby league. The answer for rugby is many other things that are more important questions than the ball and play time.
No, I totally agree with you. And you, Sharky, I mean, I live by this motto. Sometimes less, sometimes more isn't always better. Like you look at, I think with like set piece still plays a massive role. We look at the winning try for England. I mean, that defense is sucked in by a great maul from England, and then like take the maul away. There's just 15 guys running and just carrying up and down. But the set piece still plays a massive role. The Stormers Bulls game, the Bulls scrum, just dominating it. Like that's like set piece is still a very important part of rugby, and that's also a part of entertainment.
Yeah. So there's a couple things, and I know we'll touch on the line out, Malvaka's line out later, but the thing is I also believe that a lot of these law changes, they come out a little bit late. Like that whole the Springboks are kicking too much was 2019. Then they've since then been trying to change things, but rugby has evolved. Rugby's then learned to kick more accurately. And the one thing that we can say is that 50-22 law is a great one. It does change things, but they're constantly tinkering with stuff, and and so much of it is a legitimate attack at like the absolute fundamentals of the game. Like like just mauling and lineouts and scrums and stuff like that. You feel like, yeah, they're kind of stuck between like a league. They've almost trying to create an identity of like maybe NFL or league or something else, not themselves. Like, and that's what's the frustrating thing. What I will say, and something I realized this weekend, and it hit me hard, like that Mavaka lineout throw. If you want to find out if something's going to work, you can't do it like play with the UCT internal league and Marty's courses. You have to send it into the big stage so the big thinking brains can figure out a way of manipulating it. And that's what's going to happen, because so many times we see stuff and they're kind of adjusted or whatever. There's some stupid laws that they just keep persisting with. But yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22, and it's frustrating as hell because the England France game was brilliant. And I'm going to tell you straight up now, the reason why the French were off was 80% England's attitude and England's defense versus 20% of France just having an off day. Everything that happened was just under pressure. So you're having an off day and people pressurize you, you make mistakes. And it made for a brilliant game. We all know that contestable kicks make the game very exciting, especially when you've got someone like Tommy Freeman on the field. Um, when you kick badly onto England now, Marcus Smith is going to run it back at you. You and Ben Earl. Like, so there's definitely positives to it. And Rassie nails it. Like, you want to look at the numbers in isolation. There's some dude that's looking at the numbers going, "Oh, this must be a horrible game," and he didn't even watch it. And then we all watch the game and be like, "Holy smokes, this is probably that is going to be up there in the top 3 tests of the year as things stand." Well, obviously as things stand, but moving forward, like that was an incredible test match just because of the vibe, because you didn't expect France to win. Like, it was great that the underdog won, but the underdog won well in a way that they manipulated the French attack and try to figure out how to put them under pressure, and then were striking from that, which was from great kicks and low ball in play time. But when the ball was in play, it was happening.
No,
Yeah,
it
can
definitely.
if sorry, if I can add very quickly, I think Sean like makes a really good point about strategy and that we can only see what and how these laws look like once we see it at the highest level of the game. And that's the unfortunate thing is obviously, you know, with all due respect to the lovely people that like obviously coach or run things like Varsity Cup, they don't have usually the top 5, 10 coaches in the world. So obviously they don't necessarily think with the necessary latitude to really, test these laws as far as possible. So you don't see, oh, okay, this actually leads to this unintended consequence, or you can exploit something like the DuPont law of just hanging back in a kick, whatever the case may be. But these things we'll only know once we see it in international rugby. And I think the problem that World Rugby sort of creates for itself is that they then change, countering the initial change, where they don't just allow the same smart coaches to counter whatever's the new tactic that the coaches have come up with. So if the tactic is, whatever, like whatever you're doing with contesting, or it's escort laws, or it's whatever the case may be, then allow the coaches to find a way to work around it. And I mean, I think I've said this before on the pod. Don't also try to create laws for particularly just ridiculously special players or teams, which I think we've talked about with the Springboks. Like now you're trying to create a law, for example, with like limiting the number of players on a bench. The side is just not going to have 16-ish world class forwards, not ever again, but probably not in the next 30 years at least. Now, don't try to create a law when when even the Springboks are probably going to go into a bit of a lock crisis in the next 2, 3 years, for example. So I think that's the short sightedness. We need to allow coaches to think about things, to, try to exploit the laws and then to counter that exploiting. And then that's the whole coaching battle that at least I think rugby fans love and enjoy.
No, I agree with you, Taylor. And also, I think this ball and play thing, I think what makes rugby so special is that if there's a test match at Forsyth Bar under the roof, the ball and play time will increase. If you play at Ellis Park in October in the Highveld, the ball and play will increase because the conditions allow for that. But you can still get test matches like the one we saw against England and France, or the one you saw against England and Wales, where sometimes it is a tactical battle where the ball and play time will be short, but you want to watch a tactical battle. I think for me, the game will get ruined if everyone is just trying to throw the ball around. I think that's what they're trying to create is everyone must throw the ball around. It brings better play. Sometimes you want to watch a tactical masterclass, and there has to be a place for that too in the game, and that's why I agree with Rassie in terms of that. You can't just sometimes watch a game based on stats, because you watch it. If you look at the stats of the England and France game, number one, you first see 59 handling errors. You think, oh geez, here we go, Sharks versus Rebels from a couple of years ago. The game ends 6-3, but actually it was actually a very good game of rugby, and those errors are just forced through great defense. But something I'm talking about laws. Malvaka had probably one of the most ridiculous line throws I've ever seen in my life, in a good way, which I loved, because I mean it was slightly skewed, but there's no contest, so obviously you get to play on. Tell, I don't know. Do you think more sides will just basically use that option of just throwing the front guy and just getting that, especially if Lionel's struggling, and just getting the ball
Mm.
out, because technically no one's competing there, so you actually can throw it skew, and you are finding ways around the law.
Yeah, Wales did it as well when their Lions were struggling on Saturday in Rome. I think Ireland did it last week. Maybe not as sleek as Hamavaka did it. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I wish the Stormers would do it. I wish, some of the South African teams would do it, because we've been struggling with our lineouts in the URC. Like, if the law is now allowing that basically no contest means you can throw it wherever you want to throw it, then by all means. Like, I didn't quite understand the call in the Scotland game where Dan Sheehan throws it past the 15, and the ref, Dolman, blows it for it not being straight, like as it travels through the 15, because there wasn't a
So
contest from Scotland.
no, so you are not. I'm actually trying to find this because there was something I wanted to chat about. So
Sure.
if you go over the 15, you are
Just go
not.
straight.
It has to be straight. But
Okay.
there's also if it goes short. So there is a little. They have tried to cover that in the laws. I can't find the exact wording of it, but I do know that even on the short throws, you might have to have it. You might have to have it straight, which is what England were complaining about. during that test match, because there is a slight alteration to that law. But definitely, if you go over the 15, intentionally go long, it has to go. It has to be straight
Okay, fair
contest or
enough.
no.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, I think that does make sense. And Sharky, I mean, are you in favor of the law in terms of that? If there is no contest, you can throw skew. I think obviously, I think it. I mean, I think for me that rule is probably made for when a side is probably 5 meters out and the side chooses not to contest at more time in the air because of the ground. Are you happy with that law, or would you change it in either way?
No, I'm happy with it. I actually quite like it. The I'm happy to keep it, but can you let me ask for at least one more scrum on a short arm? That's can we compromise that way? So with regards to the with regards to the lineouts, I think it's great. Like, how many times has a lineout gone that it's slightly skewed, hasn't really impacted the game in any way, and the whistle's gone because you're just like, I think that's what they're trying to get away. It hasn't influenced the game in any way. Now they say you must jump up to contest for it if you want to challenge it, which I think is great because that defensively gives you decisions to make. And as you mentioned, if you're 5 meters out, we've also seen the 5 meter out, 5 meter number two jumper defensively contesting quite a bit of late in the last sort of year and a half, 2 years. So it changes the dynamic. I, for one, support this new lineout. I don't know. Is it a law yet? I don't know. This venture that they're looking at. Just don't mess it around anymore. Just leave it as is. Like, let people do it. Maybe just give us one more scrum. Thank you.
Yeah, let's 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 get the scrum back. But before we chat Six Nations, Shark, just touch quickly on Stormers Bulls. Absolute humding over game with the Bulls finally breaking their streak and finally winning a game in in Cape Town. I think it was something like the last 13 attempts or 13 years. Someone said the Bulls have not won a game in Cape Town and haven't won a game with the DHL Stadium. A roller coaster of a game. Sharky, for you quickly, was it more Stormers throwing it away? Obviously, Blomik is at the end there, missing a kick, or was it Bulls sort of finding themselves back in some good form?
Yeah, that stats about the Bulls not winning in Cape Town really like caught me by surprise. So the one I heard was they've never won in Cape Town since the URC's been around, which is
Yeah,
crazy. Like, it's wild. So yes, onto the Stormers. I really am going to sound like a hater. I've been really trying to dance around this, but they're as a whole, they're not playing well. They're a bit shit. I want to commit to like real hard words, and then I back out because I've got a couple mates there, and they like I live in Cape Town, so there's that. But the thing is they're like I'm scared I'm going to bump into Dobbo on the beach or something, and then he's going to be like, yeah, like he knows who I am. But anyway, the thing is it's just not working there. It's not working. It's not right. They're missing something. For me, every game something happens good for them. I'm like, it's a fluke or they've scrambled it, because the one thing they can do is score from anywhere. It's just weird. It's not happening. I will say straight up, Blomik is getting abuse for that game. Not for the Stormers not winning that game is like blaming a goalkeeper for letting a goal in when a team's gone through all the other players, because Mattia missed. It's Mattia. Hey? He missed a couple of kicks. I
yeah.
think he missed two. One was an absolute stinker, and yeah, the Stormers, like, they got themselves in it, but it looked like it was two of the not so great teams having a go at each other, and it just wasn't. Yeah, it was weird. Like, both. The thing is you look at a game and you be like, could both teams have lost this game? Yes, and that to me is just. It's different to the France England game. Both teams were wanting to win it. This game looked like both teams didn't want to lose it. Like, it's a different vibe, and it's a bit shitty. Having said that, the Bulls are very comfortably the highest URC placed team out there. Maybe not as bad as I'm painting them to be, but the Stormers, yeah. To me, this loss, you kind of like, you can't go, oh, that's a shock loss. I can't believe they lost to the Bulls. You can't say that. The Stormers could lose to Zebre, with the greatest of respect to them. They could lose to Zebre. They could lose to Lions. They could lose to the Dragons. at Newlands, and you won't be surprised. And I say that because it's the truth. They've got the ability to play that they will lose to the Dragons and lose and not even get a point out of it. And you'll just be like, yeah, that was coming. And that's the frustrating thing for Stormers fans.
I think for
Yeah,
me,
can I ask a question? Because I haven't. I'm still trying to sort out how to watch URC games on this side of the world. So I'm literally speaking like people that speak on Twitter without watching a game. The Stormers, according to the URC stats, had a tackle success percentage of 55%. What the hell happened?
Cameron Hanna
Was
wasn't
it
happy.
that bad? Was it
So
that bad? It didn't look good,
64
but I didn't know it
tackle
was that bad.
attempts, 64 tackle attempts, 32 missed tackles. Like, I mean, that's insane.
They slipped. The defense. I mean, I was at the game. I was working at the game. It was a great vibe. First of all, I mean, sold out. DHL Stadium is always a good vibe. Yeah, a lot of first timers were slipped by the Stormers on the weekend, and I think the defense. I mean, I think that's to be the frustrating thing for the Stormers is I think they'll feel like they let in a few soft tries, especially the one at the end there where Aka Fanameva pretty much just stole the ball from LG Yankees from a drag time. I just think yeah, Stormers defensively weren't great, but Sharky, you touched on the point. What are the Stormers missing? I'll tell you what they're missing. They're missing Roy Nell. They're missing Darren Williams, Sasha.
Mm.
There's they got a heap
Ruan
of
now
injuries
is the biggest.
that,
It's the
that
biggest.
for the Stormers you've got to put that in. And for me, Sharky, I've got to say like the Stormers like on the weekend. When the game started and the Bulls started to rumble, I mean, going into that game, the Bulls were heavy favorites, even in Cape Town. I think the the Streakers was probably their biggest. I mean, with probably the biggest, the thing they're against the most. But you think the Bulls were favorites with how weak the Stormers were, but and also the way they started, and the Bull scrum on the weekend absolutely destroyed the Stormers in that first half. I mean, it's not often you
Mm.
get to see Steve Satorne and Franz Mahelbert on roller skates going backwards. And funnily enough, the Stormers always find a way to get back in the game. And to the point where even when they look dead and buried, they found a way to create what should have been the winning try. And I mean, they got the try, I mean, which should have been the winning conversion. They should have actually done enough to win the game. That's the funny thing with the Stormers is they keep finding themselves in situations to win the game. So as bad as it is, I still think they find ways to front up and especially with a depleted squad, they still find ways to front up. They still, I mean, the try Warren Khalan scored. I mean, that's vintage Stormers, and the Bulls. I think the Bulls, their frustration is Tala. You've seen this movie many times where they can have a 20-minute period where they look like the best side in Europe. Then they'll have another 20-minute period where they look like they can barely play in the Curry Cup, and
Yeah.
that's happening all too often with the Bulls. And especially now, I think Tala, they're one more injury away from you playing 10 for them this coming weekend. So like, I do think the Bulls are in a good place. And it's funny enough, I think with the Bulls, we hold them to such a high standard because of the quality of players they have, and but yet they're sitting there third, and I think they're third in the log, and it still feels like they're operating on third gear and they haven't kicked on. And Tala, as I come to you, must be excited to know that you're actually playing a game in Loftus this weekend. I think the Bulls are finally playing in Pretoria.
We have, I'm trying to just make sure my maths is right, but out of the 9 games left in the URC, 7 of them are at Loftus. And then the 2 away are, I mean, quite difficult. It's Munster and Glasgow. But yeah, there's 7 games at home out of 9. And
What an
I
end.
think,
What an end for the Bulls. That
so
is
yeah, I think
huge.
this was a big win for the Bulls just to keep them in that race to hopefully top the log, if not at least get second. So, obviously Leinster have been unbeatable. They've gotten bonus points in almost all of their games. If the Bulls have any chance, it's obviously when Leinster tours in South Africa. I always say it was Sam Prendergast, but obviously now he's a full Irish international. But you know, with the likes of Will Connors and that crew, when the youngsters come out and the sort of second stringers or third stringers, that Leinster hopefully loses two in South Africa. One of them being against the Bulls, but so they need each and every point, and I think in a lot of these home games coming up, they need to try and get five if possible. So this was a big win for the Bulls you know, to keep Leinster just in their sights, just in the distance, and definitely for going up against Glasgow, because they're only 2 points behind Glasgow with a game in hand. So I think the main way for let me say it, the only way for the Bulls to win the URC is if they host, their knockout games, or at least most of the knockout games. As we saw last year, they should have won it, or could have won it at least. So they need to try to make sure that that happens again. So big win for the Bulls in that context, because they probably dropped a match with the Sharks that they really shouldn't have lost. I still don't know how they lost that game, but yeah, it's great that the Bulls were able to do it. And yeah, like Cook said, I mean, teams are depleted injury wise. I was slightly surprised. I thought there would be more of this the Springboks being rested right now. So I don't know if there's been any communication about the likes of Malherbe and Steenkamp, whether they're going to be playing throughout this February March period. But yeah, I think it's a big win that the Bulls were able to sneak it through. And I heard Cam Hanekom had a really good game as per usual. I heard Warren is still making people tear their hair out and also doing brilliant things in the middle as well. But yeah, Sharky, I'm hoping that the call for fly off doesn't have to go out to Morne Steyn, Nas Botha, Dirk Hougaard, Jacques-Louis Potgieter. I think those people might be
Remember
on
him.
speed dial for Jake White now.
So that was actually what I wanted to ask. I think I was actually chatting to a mate before the game, and I was just like, Willie Leroux starting at 10 versus Willie Leroux shifting in at 10 with 15, 20 minutes to go is two very different things. I thought Willie handled himself well in the beginning, and I thought fell off a little bit at the end. Where to from here for the Bulls when it comes to 10? Because
I'll keep Willie.
the say
So carry Chucky.
the thing is like they're really getting thin now. I think Villy is best utilized at 15. I don't think anyone's really arguing that. He's covering at 10. We do know that. The thing they do have in their favor is Ambrose Papier is in ridiculous form still. I don't want to say again or the best of his life. It's a still because he's cooking. So my only issue is how things are looking at 10. And if I'm not mistaken, the Goose they said to come back in March, right? End of
Yeah.
next month, or was it May? I don't know. I think it's March. But they're going to struggle
Well, I
at
mean,
10. I mean, Creel was kicking, so maybe Creel will play 10. Maybe he'll play 10 and just say, everyone, listen, screw you guys, I can do it all.
Butcher Chamberlain is there as well, to be fair.
yeah,
It's
that's the thing.
very
There's
clear
Buddha
that he's
Temple
not the
also.
option at 10. Jake said, listen, but I've given you chances. You clearly cuck, like, fix it, but you're not in favor. So he is there, but, if Butcher Chamberlain was worth anything in Jake's eyes as a 10, he would have started this weekend, and he didn't. They put
Well,
in Villy.
Fair enough.
but I think also in to play devil's advocate is I think the option of put a chain on the bench is also there just in case if Willie had an absolute stinker. Then you can always just shift him
Yeah.
back to 15 and then Buddha
Mm.
comes in at 10. So I think that's also the option there is in terms of because I mean you do get the best of both worlds. Well, I think Devin Williams is very underrated and has been having another good season for the Bulls. And I thought he was good again on the weekend. So I think you're getting the best of both worlds having Willie and Devin Williams. And I think obviously like what they did on the weekend is when Butter came on, we obviously Willie shifts to 15 and Williams can go all four. I think Moody went to 13 and then Williams went to the wing. So I think that's also the option of having Butter there is you know that at least on the bench, if Willie does have a proper
Yeah.
stinker, you've got a 10 on the bench. But like if you had to start Butter for if he goes off, then you're sort of screwed. So I won't be surprised. For me, I'll stick with Willie at 10. I think you could definitely see he hasn't played 10 for a very long time.
Or
But
we
I do.
fool Ugo Mola and put Ambrose Papier at 10.
I think if Emil Papier was French, he would definitely have moved on to 10. But talking about the French, we're gonna dive into some Six Nations. Obviously, we've had the first 2 weeks of the Six Nations and two very, very good weeks of rugby. You look at the game of the weekend, obviously England versus France, but after 2 weeks, you look at the log, you've got Ireland on 10 points with 2 bonus point wins, France sitting on 6 points, England on 6 points, Scotland on 5 points, Italy on four, and Wales. Congratulations on getting a bonus point. They're sitting on one. So I mean, barring Ireland, I mean it's very very tight this year's Six Nations. I mean, you lose a game, you could find yourself going from second to fifth which is exactly what you want. But I wanted to ask you guys, giving us a little prep. We're going to look at the last 2 weeks, and I want to ask you a question about each team as we look at each team after the first 2 weeks. And I think we'll start with Ireland, who's sitting at the top. I think the Ireland chat is it's probably the shortest out of all of them. But Tal, I want to ask you with Ireland. I think going into the Six Nations, there was a little bit of worry because it looked like at the end of the year tour, maybe the attack was starting to get figured out. Maybe the older players are were getting long in the tooth, but maybe it was just the start of the season because now at the moment the machine looks like it's back to normal. It looks like they're absolutely purring again. So do you think, Tala, it's that the machine is back together? It's just a November. It's just the Autumn Nations tour was just the start of the season, and now they're sort of operating on full flow. Or do you think maybe there's still there's still cracks in the wall in the Irish wall there?
I think, look, we can walk into at the same time. So, do Ireland need to refresh, find someone to, back up Andrew Porter? Because Cian Healy surely can't play rugby until he's 65. But, he might be able to disprove me.
But Stella,
Do they
good
need
point.
maybe to.
Is there any other lucid props in Ireland? I genuinely think there isn't. I'm like,
I mean, Dion Bluer, if he works hard enough, he might be able to get himself a passport in very quick order and play for the Irish team soon.
I'm like, surely out of all their unions, there's someone else that could come on for Cian Healy who's just basically playing 10 minutes of rugby each weekend.
I mean, 10 is a lot. I think it's more closer to 3. Yeah, look, I mean, there are obviously some, cracks, if you want to call them that, or places they really need to address it. Like, they need, to refresh their at prop. They probably need to start thinking about, obviously, Peter O'Mahony is also pretty old now. They need to start thinking about their midfield and wing division, which is a bit older, but I mean, James Lowe's in great form. Robbie Henshaw had a pretty good game. Aki's great. Gary Ringrose has somehow made 30, which makes me feel old because Ringrose was the youngster when I was still a youngster. So there are things that you can hopefully, and maybe it happens in the Wales game, where they can slowly just give a few chances to other players, like Jack Boyle. He's the third choice Leinster loosehead, which means he's the third choice Irish loosehead, obviously. So give him a few minutes to see, how he goes. But this is still at least the second best side in the world. And I mean, this is the one side that is the thorn in the side of the flesh for the Springboks right now, because, Rassie and the Springboks have not quite, gotten, don't have the beating of Ireland at the moment. And it's still a fantastic team. So, I mean, I've made the transition to Blue Sky, and a lot of Irish rugby Twitter's on it as well. And geez, the civil war that is happening between the Munster and Munster plus others and the Leinster fans is really fascinating because obviously there's a dissatisfaction that this team is too blue, which, fair enough. If you're picking the third choice hooker and prop for the Irish squad, like that's not a great message for, the rest of the unions, and it's not a good sign for where rugby is and the disproportionate distribution of the resources between the four provinces. But I think it goes to another extreme of this team is about to fall off a cliff and all that sort of stuff. And look, I'm the person, I don't want to call things too early. Like I've learned, I mean, even with the Springboks, you learn very quickly that, hey man, some teams just have it until they don't. So just rather enjoy it while they have it. And I think that's where I am with Ireland. Like until Ireland sort of falls off, until they lose to Scotland, essentially, that will be the big, canary in the mine that says, okay, Ireland, this run is over. Because as long as they're able to beat Scotland, they're still able to do the things with ball in hand. They're still able to open teams up. They're still able to really put in a shift defensively. They still have probably two of the top 6, 8 loose forwards in Van der Fleer and Doris. They still have Tyke Byrne doing crazy things. They still have Dan Sheehan being a massive game changer. They still have James Lowe, who just is good for at least one massive clean break, if not more, every game. So this team is sorted, and they're slowly but surely, I think, trying to implement things. I mean, they're giving Prendergast, the starting 10 jerseys so that Crowley can come in to finish. Like, this is a team that is, if again, I think I've said this many times before on the pod, but for Jordie Barrett's thigh in 2023, I think we'd be talking about this team very differently. You know, they're the last team that has won a series in New Zealand, that has drawn a series in South Africa. You know, they've been number 1 or 2 in the world for the best part of 3 to 4 years now. It's still a fantastic team. It's going to be hard to see any team um, beat them in the Six Nations. And obviously, we're still waiting for that Ireland versus France game. And I would still, I'd still, think France could have a chance to beat them. But I mean, obviously, losing to France is there's nothing embarrassing about that. So this is still a fantastic team. And on Sunday, the way that they just blew Scotland away in the first 20 minutes was absolutely supreme. They just put so much pressure on them defensively. Scotland was messing up, passes. They were getting charged down each and every time. They were blown away in the scrum. And Ireland was just making meters. The only thing that they didn't do was score. And that did give Scotland a bit of a chance to come in the third quarter. But, by the time this Ireland subs came on, it was game over. And Ireland just have a really good and deep bench now um, at the moment, and they have the likes of Jack Conan and Sheehan, not Kian Healy, as we've discussed. Those people that can make an impact. So yeah, this team is in a really good place, and until proven otherwise, I think people should just keep on believing in them because there's no reason for them to fall off just yet.
No, I agree with you. Tell, I love the fact that you mentioned the Irish bench. Jack Cohen was incredible off the bench of
Wow.
the weekend. Now you got
Wow.
the likes of Dan Sheehan. I think Ron Killer. Whether you got Ron Killer or Dan Sheehan off the bench doesn't matter because I think Ron Killer's also stepped it up a big level. I'm a big Ryan Baird fan as well. I think he's phenomenal off the bench as well. And I think Ireland's bench at the moment, and the fact that I love is you're either dealing with a Gary Ringrose off the bench or you're dealing with a Robbie Henshaw. Then you have a Jack Crowley. Then you have a Conor Murray if needs be with experience there. But yeah, they are putting in all cylinders. But Sharky, I'm gonna give this to you because Tyler did mention the civil war between Munster and Leinster. I think the core of that civil war is Sam Prendergast and Jack Crowley. Man of the match of the weekend was Sam Prendergast. Jack Crowley went on and played 15 and then when he came off the bench. Where do you stand on that, Sharky? Are you still do you keep do you give Sam Prendergast the keys, or do you still think Jack Crowley should be the starting 10 for Ireland?
I'm going to stick to what I said before the Six Nations kicked off. Crowley's your man. If we're very honest, Crowley's done nothing wrong to be dropped. So there's that. It's not like he had a wobbly game
It's Munster.
or he's
He plays for Munster. That's
sorry.
the problem. He plays for
Yes,
Munster. Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. We know this. So this is the thing, and that's also why there's such a massive shitstorm brewing, or not brewing. It has been brewing forever, and now there's someone's just throwing fuel on it. But then Prendergast goes and plays the way he does this weekend. So my thinking on Prendergast was like this guy needs test minutes against big teams just to see how he starts and goes. And now they've kind of kept him there for 2 weeks. Crowley and Munster must be thinking, what the freaking hell? And the answer can only be because Prendergast is in blue and not in red. Like, it's the truth. Prendergast had a good game this weekend. So is Prendergast absolutely tearing it up at training that he's forced his way in? Or has Farrell said, listen, this kid needs more of a chance. I want to get him ready for the Lions tour. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. I just hope that the communication is good. The thing about Prendergast, he's big. He's 6'4", I think. So he looks like he doesn't have an ounce of fat on him. He hasn't grown into himself yet. That guy's got to pick up a little bit more weight if he's going to sustain life at 10 in Test rugby. But other than that, everything's fine. Like, his passing is good, his vision is good, his kick passing, his execution. He just quietly goes about it. He's not, he's not like running to the cameras to celebrate. He's not in people's faces like Sexton. He's very different personality, and I think that's what people are also struggling to get used to. Is like physically how he looks, and how quiet his sort of demeanor is. He's good though. I feel for Crowley, and I still think Crowley. Yeah, this is going to be controversial. I still think Crowley is the first choice 10 in Ireland. Um, I don't even believe myself when I say that after seeing Prendergast start the last 2 weeks. You're kind of like, did Crowley say something at training or do something stupid? Like, did he stand on Warguard's hand by accident in training, and then now the rest of the Irish team saw that, and even though he's from Munster, they're like, cool, you out of here, buddy. Take care now, bye bye then. Did he speak up against Ken Healy always being there? Like that's kind of what you're thinking of. Like, well, who is he pissed off? But yeah, Prendergast is, in my world, Crowley's number one and Prendergast is number two. If I was coaching Ireland now, I don't see what Crowley's done wrong, and I think he offers a hell of a lot.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you, Sean. That is Crowley the better rugby player right now? I think it's probably more yes than no. Like, if you want to put it on a percentage, I think it's maybe, if you're generous to Crowley, maybe 60-40 to him. But I think two things. One, I think as South Africans, we know this. Being put on the bench doesn't mean you're dropped, especially tactically. So
have you
if
spoken to the Munster fans?
Well, I mean, they'll need to get to that program, but yeah, I mean, I think it makes a point with the second point, which is, I don't think you finish a game with Prendergast. I think he's not really a finishing type of 10 because of the experience and just I think just the athleticism is not really his strong point. Like you kind of want a 10 that can run, a 10 that can sort of really boss the game himself and really take advantage of tired bodies. I think Prendergast is the perfect sort of table setter, and then you have Crowley that can come in and finish. So I don't think it's necessarily a thing that Crowley did wrong. I do think, though, I mean, not that he did anything wrong per se, but I do think there were some performances, I think in November, even in the South Africa tour, you're just like, oh, we could get more. But I don't think it was necessarily that was the reason why. I just think this Prendergast kid is really talented. I think the way that he just controls the team and does everything right with regards to just putting everything there. It's literally just a matter of his body just having to catch up and just putting on a few kilograms so that, you know, be it Ollie Lawrence or Jack Dempsey, those people aren't really running over him as easily. But most of it is almost there. I think just his ability to really run this attack and that lovely sort of floater pass that he has and his ability to just get Ireland and the machine going through its phases. Like it's all there. I don't think it's too dissimilar to what the Boks were doing last season with Sasha Feinberg or Mazulu, where is Sasha better than Andre Pollard right now? Probably not. But and obviously Crowley and Prendergast are much closer in age than Andre and Sasha. But you know what? Give the kid some caps. And I mean, it's the same group of fans that are also complaining that like the island's not giving chances to youngsters. Obviously, maybe if you're a youngster from playing in Dublin, then a youngster playing, in Cork or in Belfast, you have a much better chance. But nonetheless, that's what Ireland is doing. They are giving caps to Prendergast, like the likes of Prendergast, McCarthy, not Ty Byrne, Ryan Baird. Those players are going to get themselves to 30, 40 caps by the time they go to Australia in 2027. That's what you want. We can't just invest in one option or that. So like Ireland is doing what I think people want Ireland to do with all the other positions. They're doing it in 10 and giving, the youngster the chance to establish himself, like Crowley did last season and had the chance to have a whole Six Nations and pretty much a whole year for him to play each and every game. So you need to give Prendergast a chance to learn. And I think what was great about Prendergast was he had a pretty shaky first half against England. He really struggled with the rush defence, and fair enough. A lot of flyers do. I mean, Jalibert just struggled this weekend, but he had a good 20 minutes before he came off against England, and he just continued with that against Scotland. And maybe it's also because Scotland doesn't employ a rush defence, and maybe we'll see with France, I'm sure they'll try to target him and try to really get into him, like with bringing, the likes of Miafu and Aldred running into his channel. But I think it's a good thing to have Prendergast starting right now and accumulating experience and caps. But Sean, yeah, if it doesn't necessarily mean that if Ireland was in a quarterfinal tomorrow, that he would be the one that plays 80 minutes. It's maybe then Farrell, whoever would then give the keys to Crowley.
Yeah, you're 100% right. If Ireland are playing a quarterfinal tomorrow, they know, excuse me, that they've got Crowley to start and Prendergast on the bench, or vice versa. That's the key thing for me, and you've highlighted it well. Is they are making sure that their fly half has 10 caps by the time he goes to a World Cup. They are making sure that they have someone to fall back on, because there was a long period of time when we're like, oh, thank goodness Ireland have got Crowley. Else they just wouldn't have anyone. And that's what it looked like. Like, we weren't sure that Byrne was the answer. It's clear that he's not, or either of them. And it was Crowley. It was Crowley. It was Crowley or bust. And now they've got another youngster, and it just so happens that he and Crowley are in form at the same time. So then you got to work with it, dovetail your tens and horses for courses moving forward.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head saying that we all wanted Ireland to sort of add a few youngsters in. I think they're doing that. I mean, if you're gonna throw in a same Prendergast in games like this, it. I think Jack Crowley ticked all the boxes last year. I think you can do the same with Sam Prendergast, and you can be in a situation. I think in South Africa, we're blessed to have a Sasha and a Henry Pollard. We celebrate that. And you have a Marnie. I think that's the same thing that Ireland's trying to create now. And you look at Sam Prendergast on the weekend, and it's basically a Johnny Sexton light, minus the moaning. And what he lacks in moaning, he makes up in not making any tackles. So it's a good balance you have when you get with Sam Prendergast there. But I want to look at the next side. You look at England, and with England, it's very simple. Sharky, we talked about England last year, just not getting that big win, showing glimpses against the All Blacks, against the Springboks, but just not coming, just not getting, just not wrapping up games, and not getting the big win, losing games at the end. And now the next season, this season, Six Nations against France, they actually go and win a game at the death. When you felt like when Bill Barry scored his second try, you're thinking, okay, this is game over. But again, England found a way to score a try, and a great try that is. Is this the victory they've been looking for? And is this them finally turning the corner?
I'm a bit torn. I think it's going to paper over some cracks. But my biggest issue with Borthwick was that he never really completely pushed the boat out. And he's done it in the first opening 2 test matches with his team selections, where they're not fully doing it. So I have a bone to pick, and I really would like to discuss it, is about the bench, which I'll get onto later. With regards to England turning the corner, they did this with Willis at 8. I second watched this. I thought Willis was poor, not poor. I just didn't think he was there at the races. I second watched it, and Willis was outstanding. Mitchell is constantly shit good. Like, he unlocks everything for them, but he makes some silly errors. They've got unbelievable fives. Like in Martin and Chesham, they've got 2 guys that really put in massive, massive shifts. They're probably going to look at finding a way to put both of them on the field to start in certain games. Tom Curry's cooking at the moment. It's really interesting. The changes I would make, I think Cowan Dickey, I think he was there to fill a gap. I don't think, he's got to regain some, he's got to throw his darts better, just quite simply put. But, George did well coming off the bench. Henry Slade was outstanding. Henry Slade is probably the best game I've seen him play in England jersey in a very, very long time. Smith at the back, like, would they name this? This is not the type of side and game plan they can play every week. This is a game plan and a team that you'd bring out for certain key games. I don't think what they're doing is sustainable to make it long term. And that brings me onto the bench. I'm very quick. We all know that, and especially as South Africans, 23 players is the answer to win games and win tournaments and win everything. I think Elliot Daly came on in the 75th minute just purely because they needed a little something, and maybe Henry Slade was absolutely shattered. But Chandler Cunningham South wasn't used. Harry Randall wasn't used. Elliot Daly came on in the 75th minute. If they had lost and he hadn't scored that try, it would have been a nothing sub. but I mean, that's why you make subs. And that's my thing. Like, you have to start using your bench. You've got to start trusting your guys. Was it the right time to make those changes in this game? Probably not. I don't see Chandler Cunningham South coming in for any of the loose trio that were on the park, because he was because who would he replace? So there's that, and there's no ways that Harry Randall was going to come on and do something different than Alex Mitchell. And it must be said, I don't rate Harry Randall. I think he's stealing a living in Test rugby. I think there's better options. So that's my thing. But you wouldn't have made those changes. I was moaning about it last year with the All Blacks, that they've got to use their bench. And I think England, if you want to be competitive, you have to have 30 players that can be on your starting lineup or your bench. And it's not easy to do, but it's attainable out of the Premiership. It definitely, most certainly is. I'd like to think this is England able to turn the corner. The biggest question, and it's come at the perfect time for them, is how do they change what they need to change? They've got 2 weeks now until they face Scotland, their bogey team. If they can overcome Scotland and beat them almost as underdogs, it would be huge. And beat them in a good way, like beat them by playing a good game plan and executing. But I don't think this game plan and this starting 15 is a sustainable test match rugby animal moving forward. They need to make changes.
Like you said, I mean, I think it's definitely horses for courses. I think obviously, I think someone like a Furbank still got to come back. I don't think the loose trio was a little bit more balanced with Willis coming in. I still think their best loose trio is having someone like a Chandler Cunningham South at 6 or George Martin at 6, which I think we'll probably see maybe they're playing against Ireland, for example. But Tyler, I think the big talking point of the weekend was Marcus Smith and Finn Smith. I think Marcus Smith, obviously, the boot. The funny thing, unfortunately, you couldn't hear the English commentary because you're dealing with Italian. Is the English commentators, they just didn't know how to feel about Marcus Smith. They were either praising him so highly, or they were raging on him. I was like, guys, you gotta even tweet like, guys, these guys decide how they feel about Marcus Smith.
Yeah.
And I think his kicking has not been good. I think Finn Smith should kick. Tyler, I think moving forward, would you keep Finn Smith at 10, Marcus at 15, or do you think Marcus Smith is still England's 10?
Yeah, so I think, okay, number one, I agree a lot with what Sean said. I think Borthwick actually, and we need to give him credit for this, he's really good at preparing a game plan for a particular side. Like, maybe it's because he was raised by Eddie Jones as a coach, and obviously Eddie was the one sort of like the one game to save your life master, as we know. And Borthwick has done really well with targeting some things with Ireland and having the three, open side flanks starting this week. Just being like, look, we don't need a 15 that can catch balls up in the air because, France kicks long. But, we're going to use and exploit LBB with Tommy Freeman. So those adjustments are great. I think it puts England in good stead, and hopefully, like, it means also that the players are trusting the coach to be like, okay, you're not being started this week, but I have a plan for you when we play, a team that kicks a lot, maybe or kicks a lot of contest balls like the Box or whatever the case is. That will Freddie Stewart will come back, whatever the case may be. With the 10 thing, look, Finn Smith had a really good game. I think his strength in just being a bit more of a classical fly half that can organize a team around him, and obviously his chemistry with the Northampton guys helps a lot. So Marcus is sort of closer to Marcus plays, I think, a lot like how people think, or maybe how Finn used to play. Finn Russell, that is. Okay, this Finn thing is very confusing, but Marcus will try to do a lot by himself and will try and carry by himself and try to create opportunities by himself. And sometimes it's the best option because, especially when England doesn't play with, Furback at 15 or Slade on top form, there aren't really other creators around him. So Smith has to, do a lot of things by himself. And because England doesn't have big ball carriers in their pack, they're not getting that go forward from that. They need to rely on Smith's quick feet in order to get over the advantage line. So, but yeah, like in some ways, I do think Smith has been in really good form. I don't think there's any reason to not start him, but I can also see a world where slowly but surely you see it makes more sense for Finn Smith to be the one that plays. So yeah, it's an interesting position for Steve Borthwick to be for next week. So we take Scotland, for example. Scotland doesn't really kick a lot. They prefer to keep the ball in hand. So do you want I think you want your fullback. Your fullback doesn't have to be great in the air necessarily. I think, Ben White and Finn Russell, they do test you with that, but maybe not really that much to change your tactics. But you want a fullback that can stop some of these breaks. Duan van der Merwe is going to have 3 clean breaks against England. Like, it's in his contract. So do you want a fullback that can stop him one-on-one? Do you think it's Freddie Stewart? Maybe not, because we know Freddie Stewart can't really change direction. Is it Marcus Smith? I don't know. He's not really the best defensive player in the world. So the 15 thing becomes a problem. And then the 10 thing is, okay, Finn has played fantastically, but if we want to score as many points as possible, and I think for Scotland, you probably need to score 4 tries to win the game. Is Finn Smith the way to get to that 4 tries? If we're playing someone like Stewart at 15, or was Finn Smith really good because he also had Marcus Smith helping him with running the game at 10? So that's the interesting things that I would like to also have another watch at the game to try and sort of figure out for myself. But that's definitely something I think Borthwick will be thinking about for the next 2 weeks. I still think Marcus Smith is their player 10. I just think they don't get enough from, their forwards with ball carrying. Their centers are kind of same, but different. Like, they don't really have a center that can really either carry it up the guts or really do that much playmaking. But I like Sean. I agree with Sean saying that was probably one of the better Henry Slade games we've had in quite a while. But yeah, a lot rests on the number 10 to run the game, to create things more or less out of nothing, because there's a lack of supply of certain types of players that England still doesn't have. They still don't really have a replacement for Billy Vunipola. They still don't really have a replacement for Manu Tuilagi. We're still talking about those things. I mean, you can somewhat say they kind of haven't really replaced Elliot Daly, like that good balance of a good high ball 15 with someone that can help with creating opportunities in attack as well. So I think the question for England is, how much do they read into this game? I mean, we'll talk about Les Bleus in a moment. I mean, France could have easily been 3 or 4 tries ahead before half time if they were able to catch the ball in the rain. But England did really well. Their defense did really well to put them under pressure. But also their defense let them through relatively easy at times. It's such a and yeah, I think we're still almost a year or another year through with Steve Borthwick, and there's some places where you're just like, I see it, and there's some places you're just like, oh, I don't know. And yeah, it's the most fascinating team I think in Test rugby right now, because I think you ask 10 different rugby experts, the Squidges, the people on this recording with me about what they think with England. I think you get 10 different answers and 10 varying levels of confidence to uncertainty about what's happening. But yeah, I think this was a good, you sort of adapting to the thing, to the game stage, you're adapting to the team. It helped having more experience off the bench. Now, yeah, does that now mean Jamie George should start? And are you back to Cowan Dickey not really not really making an impact from the bench? Is your lineup still going to just be a mess because you only have one lineout jumper in Itoje, or should you put in Chesum into your starting team? Like, these are the things that both will have to figure out for the Scotland game.
The one thing I will say is, like, all these things that we're highlighting are bang on, and England could have lost because of them, but they didn't. The one thing about England, though, is they really did. It really looked like to me is they really committed to what they needed to do, which was a difference to what we're used to seeing. And you're right. Like, as much as Billy Vunipola's replacement is a bit of the issue, I think Willis and his brother in Toulouse, like, England need to start looking at making some changes. 12 is an issue for me. They don't really have anyone like that at the moment. What I will say, if they are going to try something, is Max Ojomo from Bath, who obviously plays with Ollie Lawrence. He's a little bit bigger as a 12 and can play a little bit more direct, but he also has that 10 brain on him, like that Slade, that playmaker option. He's not like out and out Tuilagi. He will just like run you or step you or something. So I would like to see that happen sometime soon. But I think Ajomo's he was having a great season last season, picked up an injury, and he's only just really coming back now. So maybe we'll see it like come June-ish, maybe a little bit later. But they don't really, and I'm only saying that because like I've seen him and Lawrence play together, which it's pretty clear Lawrence is going to be there and going to be there 13. I don't want Lawrence to move to 12. That's what I don't want. If it's in-game emergency, go for it. But I don't want him to be playing 12. I think 13 is definitely his option at the moment, and he's quite a big hitter out there. And he just gets a couple more meters space. He's got great feet and good pace. So there's that. 12 is a massive concern for them. And if you look at this back line, like it's super light. Even when they have that big dude at 15, even when they have him, they don't even use him to set up a massive platform. Like Slatome could do it. I quite like him. He's quite a big, aggressive, in-your-face runner. He's got that sort of vibe about him. Freeman a little bit as well. So they've got those options to set those platforms. They just need to work around it. But from 6 to 15, they were extremely light. And it's like if it went wrong, you could see why, but they made it work and they were stuck on it. It was brilliant.
Can I very quickly just say, with the forwards, just that carrying issue, the tight five that started on Saturday, between them made 8 carries. 2 for Genge, 3 for Cowan Dickey, 2 for Itoje, 1 for Martin, 0 for Stewart. Like, you need at least one, if not two, of your tight five people just being someone that can set a platform, like a Miafu, like a Porter that can do it for Ireland. Like, if you don't really have that, that makes it difficult. And with Curry and Earl, they made a lot of carries, but you don't want especially someone like Ben Earl, you don't want him carrying in traffic, like, amongst the forwards. You kind of want him to be, using his pace out wide. So I think it's almost like a big fundamental problem that England has that I think will stop them from being consistent if they can't really figure out that. And with George Martin, you would think with his size and his ability to get low, he should be pretty good at that. It's just not really an effective carrier. I don't know why. I feel like he should be a lot better than he is. But I think that yes, the 12 thing is an issue as well. Even the 15 thing, choosing a 10 is also a bit of a question, but they need to really find a way to get in more ball carries into their team.
No, they really do, and I can't understand a side that has Edis Genjin and making him only carry twice. That is ridiculous to me.
Yes.
I want to talk. No, it makes no sense. But let's talk about the opponents. The French. For me, Tala, I would like to ask you. I mean, they were good against Wales in that first game, and then I just feel like they left their hands in Paris. If they just caught maybe 2 of those chances, they're sitting here unbeaten on the bonus point. Do you think? I know obviously in France there's going to be a big overreaction. South Africans love the fact that Dupont had a bit of a stinker. Tyler, personally think that France is fine. I just think it's one of those days where, yes, England put them under pressure, but there's about 4 tries they butchered there because of just very, very poor hands. And I thought the attack was as good as you've seen for a while. It's just that they just literally did not know how to catch.
Yeah, look, as a France sympathetic person, I think probably the most sympathetic French person in South Africa or who has a South African passport. It is disappointing, and there is that sense. I think Ben Nurse was the one saying, like, is the France Dupont era over last year during the Six Nations? And a lot of people were like, what are you talking about? There is that thing of like, geez, they might not quite reach their full potential in international rugby and win as much as they could or should with this talent, just because there is that, like, the thing that makes them good is also the thing that can be frustrating and sort of lose them games in situations like this. The main thing for France was obviously one, they kept England in the game. And by doing that, that's how England would come back. And it's obviously very difficult to now stop that tide when you're playing away from home and things are not quite going well and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's just that ability to adapt that Ireland has that France doesn't have. I think that's the big difference between the two teams. I think Ireland and France are pretty set on how they want to play. Ireland go through the phases. They, able to, we know what they do with the quick ball and playing multi-phase. France play a different type of multi-phase where it's long kicks, get into your territory, try to play from broken play, and then offload the crap out of you. And in a game like that in the rain, with the rush defense that England has, should France have gone a bit more like, okay, we need to play the percentages, we need to actually get into their half, we need to try and limit the risk so that we're not giving away sort of 50-50s that we're just not catching at the moment. Should Thomas Ramos, when he catches the ball, try to be running it every time, which was very frustrating because he just got himself into trouble quite a few times. And I think that played into England's hands because England won the turnover battle. I think it was 8-5. And quite a few of them were the ball gets kicked long, France tries to run it back, they get themselves caught in the web of white jerseys. So France just have to be able to adjust to the game state and be like, look, it's not working for us here. We need to try to get to the corners. We need to try and, not play rugby in that sort of like, that 50-22 area. I think that's the first thing is just the ability to adjust to how the game is going. And yeah, I think I'm of the belief that if it was Romain Tamak playing instead of Mati Jalibert, that would have helped a lot because Tamak, I think, has that maybe 1% non-French brain in him or French like bone in him that is able to go, okay, let's just calm things down. Let's just put the ball in the corner and try and start from there. The second thing is their defense was just not good enough on Saturday. And for, I think, a Sean Edwards defense, yes, it's a bit more of a rush defense, but it's a more classical rush defense. Like tackle completion, I think, is more important for a Sean Edwards type defense than it is for Jacques Nienaber. So them having tackle success of 71% is not good enough. Missing 31 tackles is just not good enough for France. And it just seemed like every time England got to their 22, they got points. And that's just not good enough. And whereas with the New Zealand game in November, they were able to just keep New Zealand out and they were able to just desperately sort of get the cover defense and do enough in order to keep them out. They're not doing it here. And I think that was the beating of them because it's not, they had the opportunities. They, like we said, they could have caught those opportunities on another day. But it's the fact that England were able to get to 26 points, they were able to score 4 tries. That was the main reason they lost that game. And yeah, I think there'll be a lot of questions from Sean Edwards. The last try, I think, was a good example where I think Morfine and Barassi both individually had really good games, especially in attack. But both maybe, obviously, it's a new center combination. And I think, especially in that last try, Mofana and Barassi are kind of going for the same channel, and that creates the space for Daly. So there's a bit of a hole there. Maybe it's also just their bench is maybe not as experienced going back to benches now. It does seem like their new pack, with Colom and Aradu and those sort of players coming in who don't really have the caps that, a Jamie George has just by himself. That also didn't really help them because then England really turned around in the scrum and in the line out in the last 20 minutes. So, yeah, I think I agree with you, Cooks. That's not like big things to worry about. But, yeah, I think for the learnings that Galtier and this team have to take is a game, not all games will go the way that you want them to go, if I can put it like that. You need to be able to adjust. And it can't be that you play yourself into a wall. There needs to be either from upstairs or on the field that thing of, okay, guys, the offloads and stuff are not working for us, or the defense, it's not quite working there. England are getting through us and we are not stopping the threat from the Smiths. So we need to just, lock things down. We need to go into a bit of a plan B, and they don't. I don't think they have that as much as the other sort of top four teams, the Ireland, the Boxer, New Zealand, that they can maybe sort of turn their game around and do go into a plan B when the situation arises.
Do you think Sharky, as well, I think Tali made some fantastic points. Do you think Sharky, it does look like with France, I think from November to now, there is a bit more of an inclining to throw the ball around a bit more, a la Toulouse, and not as, I mean, they don't do the pick and goes, which are famous for as they used to in the sort of they ran before the World Cup, and there's a lot more jouer where I thought before the World Cup they were a lot tighter. I mean, the weekend, like Tali mentioned, you were spot on. They were still looking for offloads, even when it's not on, still looking to play. And unfortunately, if you're playing such a high octane game on attack, you do get days like you get on the weekend where unfortunately you can't you the attack doesn't work as well. You're dropping a few passes, but also on top of that, Sharky, someone like Jalibert again is a massive chance for him. I don't think he had a good game with Ntamak coming back. I think they look so much more fluid with Ntamak there last week against Wales. Do you think Ntamak is almost running out of chances? I mean, Jalibert is running out of chances, and do you think again they'll probably stick with him and not maybe throw it in a Thomas Ramos at 10?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I will say, as much as we looking back now in hindsight, we like, yeah, they should have tried something different, but it's very unusual for the French side to play like that and not have one of those tries come off. What I will say is their tries, like their one try that they didn't score because of the Dupont knock on, and two of their tries, I think it was two, were screamers from 60 meters out. Like they were done by England's defense, like just cooking, like England just being up in everyone's face. And it's unusual for the French not to have one of those. If one of those tries pulled off, then France are probably winning by 12 points. Like that's just how it is. So it's just one of those games, I think. With regards to Jalibert, you almost feel that he is running out of chances. You do feel that. Had they won, though, we'd be having a different conversation. And if we're very honest, it was a very, very, very tight game. It really could have gone anyway. Um, so I don't think he played too badly. I think with him having left the squad previously and come back now, and with Ntamak there, I think that disruption probably affected France a little bit more than they'd like to admit. But he's still good enough to hang around and still good enough to do it. Yeah, it was just one of those games. Like you run into a team that you should beat. It's their final, and everything comes off for them, and some silly things don't work for you, but you carry on carrying on because you know that it's gonna happen. And up until the 79th minute, it was gonna happen. And they were just done in by a great maul that sucked in everybody and caused chaos elsewhere. So yeah, very tough. It's a tough one to answer, but you kind of do feel that Jalibert, is he the one being scapegoated because of that? I don't know, but he needs to start cooking a little bit more.
No, I agree with you. I think he's got to cook a little bit more, but I've been avoiding this as we move on to the next side of all pod. I mean, Scotland. Like, I just my official stance is I'm done. I'm no longer believing. Like, this is who they are now. Like, even on the weekend, you're sitting there, like, Ireland's coming into town. It's at Murrayfield. Yes, there's no Tupalu. You're thinking, you know what? This is the time where, they get this win against a big side of the islands, or, and then 50 minutes in, I was like, yeah, here we go again. I've seen this movie. I checked out mentally after 50 minutes. I'm like, even when they had that spurt, like at the end of the half and sort of second half, and I was like, oh, here comes the Scottish run. I'm like, it's going to end again. It's going to, like, it's nothing. I'm so done with the rugby side. Unless, I think Jeremy made a good point. I think we spoke about this earlier at the start of I think the end of last year, and we said maybe Gregor Townsend has just run his course with the side, and this is as far as he can take them. But guys, we've said the same thing for the last 3 or 4. I think since rugby started, the of of Scotland. Yes, they're gonna and watch. I promise you, I need them to lose to England in the next game. I can't afford to see them turn up and cook England again. Like they talk about, their fans talk about this being the golden generation. Do something. Do like do something. Like golden generation. Like what is it? Like do something. Beat a big side, and not just keep beating England all the time. Like just beat a big team. Beat one of the top four. Eventually knock one of them over at home. Not just at the end Scotland showed some fight, but we beat England and next year. Oh, I'm so down with those guys. Like I don't know, Tyler. I mean, you keep preaching on me like I've got to give up on these guys, but I'm officially done now.
Yeah, look, I I don't know. There needs to be some level of like counselling for you Scottish fans, and just be like, look, just sit you down and just be like, look, it's like when you sit down with a friend and being like, look, you're in a toxic relationship, mate, let go. Like, just break up, delete the phone, delete the social media, like pages, like, just let go. And I think that's where Scottish fans just have to be now with this team. And Cooks, I think you might be right that maybe losing to England this in 2 weeks' time might be the thing that has them either changing approach or changing direction, because it's just the team has hit their ceiling, which is fifth, sixth best in the world, fifth to seventh best in the world, good enough to, beat England. They will beat Argentina probably, at least 50% of the time, and beat pretty much everyone else below that at home. But you won't get them to be in the top four. I mean, yeah, everything I've said, guys, for people that have listened to the podcast, I've said for at least the last few years, which is maybe Scotland just doesn't have the players to be in the top four. That's possible. Maybe it is Gregor Townsend's fault. I don't think there's some things that they do that helps themselves, but yeah, that's where we are. Look, in a competition like the Six Nations, where you're facing teams every year, it should be that, like, I don't know what you want to call it, like Murphy's Law, whatever the case is, that you have one day where you're lucky and the other team is unlucky. Kind of like what happened with England, that they were able to beat France because maybe France was a bit off their game and they were really on their game and took their chances. So Scotland hasn't beaten Ireland now 11 occasions since 2016. Does that mean that they've just never had a day where they've played well enough and Ireland has been a bit unlucky for them to be able to beat Ireland? I mean, was it 2 years ago the match where Josh van der Fleer had to throw in to the line out for the whole of the second half pretty much,
Yeah,
and Scotland just
it
barely
was.
contested the line out?
Yeah, it was.
So what? Yeah, that's I think the question for Scotland and Gregor Townsend and the senior players. What are you doing? Like, why aren't you able to capitalize on those things? And it really is a big mental block that they have against Ireland. And I was saying on Blue Sky that anytime they play a team in green, it's just over for them. They just are not able to play well enough in order to beat them. And again, you asking questions about those big senior players. I think the only one that I would say had a good game was Rory Dodge. Maybe Jack Dempsey. Maybe you can sort of squint your eyes
Thank you. Thank you
at
for saying that.
you can squint your eyes at some of the others. But everyone else, like these like potential Lions players and players that should be world class, yeah, we know what happened. Is it a game against the top team? We know that they weren't that they didn't play well. And sorry, I need to actually bring up something from 4 years ago. Scotland fans, you guys gaslighted us about Hamish Watson. You guys made him sound like he was this world class player, and I'm actually now retrospectively angry about that. That was a lie. You guys are just going, oh, he has 100% tackle rate. He hasn't missed a tackle in 6 years. That's not a way of measuring if a player is good or not. Like, and he was sort of that typical player that great against England for that one match in the year. Where's he against the All Blacks or the Springboks or Ireland, whatever the case is? Nowhere to be seen. And yeah, that was just once again that. Like, even before the Russell and Darcy Graham injuries, and just, yeah, hopefully Darcy Graham is doing okay, because that was a sickening blow. Um, Scotland was just playing some of the dumbest rugby I've seen. Like, just
Yeah.
dropping balls, missing passes, getting charged down like 4 times in the first 20 minutes. Like, they were lucky it was only 7-0 going into like the 30th minute.
Yeah, I mean, they're about like four, like it was like three tries held up, and you're like, they're basically holding on for dear life. But I mean, like those guys, I mean, it's just so frustrating. And I know, like the Scottish fans, too, they're like, you know what, yeah, but you got those concussions. It wasn't great before the concussions. Like so, like it wasn't then. And I just think, oh, man, like you can just queue up everything we've said, like last year. And that's the worst part. They're gonna like Tupelu's gonna come back and they're gonna be like, you know what, this is what we needed was Tupelutu. That's what's holding us back in the Six Nations. Oh fuck, those guys are
They must be
frustrating.
they must be careful he's not injured for too long, because England will sign him up, because they could use with that cupboard 12. I just want to go back to that head knock. So it's been confirmed on socials now. So the comms in the game were like, Finn Russell has passed his HIA, so he'll be returning. Then he's standing there chatting on the sideline, and the next thing we see him sitting down, and the comms were like, "Well, it doesn't look like he's coming back on." We then subsequently find out he passed his HIA, but he didn't return for whatever reason. So this is how it happened. After he passed his HIA, he was chatting to, is it Peter Horn, one of the Horn brothers, that is was on the sort of coaching side, because he's obviously played last week, and was talking to Finn Russell and realized that he wasn't getting the plays. Like when they were having the conversation, he wasn't like remembering the plays. And the Scottish coaching staff and medical team stood him down. Not the medical doctors that do the HIAs. Scotland themselves said, listen, he's not right, so he's not playing. That's quite something, especially because it's Finn and because they were still in with a shout at the moment at that time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Scotland, those bastards. But
Cooks, just maybe asking you the question, like, yeah, where, if there's a blame pie for Scotland, is it the players themselves getting selected? Is it maybe the lack of players that Scotland has access to? Is it Gregor Townsend? So out of those three things, how much blame do you apportion? Is it 50% on Townsend, 25% on the players they have, 25% of the players that, they just have a shallower pool than, South Africa or France have, for example? Or what do you think it is?
yeah, I think it's 50-50 in terms of shallow pool and Gregor Townsend. Because you look at, like, for the last 4 or 5 years, the one thing we've said about Scotland is that they just don't have a pack to compete against the Springboks or Ireland or France. And again, the England Ireland bullied them on the weekend. Their first 20 minutes, absolutely battered them. And you think to yourself, man, like Scotland's got to, if Ireland is doing that to you, good luck if you playing against the Springboks. Or I mean, not Ireland have stepped up the game physically, but against France, you're not going to get anywhere. I think that's the shallow pool does come to hurt them there. But I also think with Gregor Townsend, I just feel like it's like what more can he do with the side? It's been a long journey. It's 6-7 years now he's been coaching Scotland. What more can he do? How far can he take them? Maybe it's time to give someone else an opportunity at the helm to see what they can do, because you're right, it is their golden generation. But this is what happens every year. I mean, like, what do they do? Beat Italy and then beat Wales, and you go, okay, cool, they won 3 games. Like, okay, cool, copy paste from next season, and then end of year tour, you're going to beat the Wallabies, and then potentially lose to Argentina, but then you lose to Springboks and the All Blacks. And I understand it's a daunting task, but you're thinking with this sort of generation, they've got to win those games. And now, like you mentioned, everyone thought Scotland could maybe have a few guys playing for the Lions. I'm like, I don't want these guys playing anywhere starting for the Lions. No, you can't win 3 games. You guys, you have like 5 guys starting for the Lions, and that's the frustrating part. So, I don't know what they're going to do. But let's talk about the last two sides. Italy, another great win for them over Wales. I don't know, Sharky, do you think for Italy, I think the exciting thing for me for Italy was the fact they walked in as favourites. The conditions probably suited Warren Ball more than anything else. And Italy fronted up, kicked very well. Tactically, they were great. Do you think now the next step for Italy is probably get to where Scotland is knock over a an England and possibly a Scotland and go from winning one game to winning two and possibly three, where I think this is the year they could potentially do that.
Whew. This year is a tough one. I just don't know how long this sort of purple patch will last for. But yes, they came in as favourites. I actually picked Wales to win this because I just thought Italy going in favourites. They'd never won there. Wales, just where they are, I thought they might win it. But as close as it seemed for much of the game, it really wasn't. Italy were incredible. They played with a different type of maturity. They played like different animals. There was a lot more composure there. Can they beat someone like England at the moment? Um, they probably could have beaten England if it was the first game in the Six Nations, if that's what it was. That maybe it was there, or the second game perhaps. But it's a weird one. You kind of think like, is this the next step? And that's quite something. It is quite something. I don't. I just don't think they've got the 23 to do it. They have to really have the perfect storm, even more perfect than what England had this week against France. I would love it though. It would cause chaos. It would imagine. But the thing about Italy is the changes they've made in the coaching and everything has all been made at the right times for growth, and they're growing on it. Like they're using those foundations and moving forward. So they totally have the ability to beat um, an Argentina, possibly an Australia, possibly an England. I think they've got what it takes to beat a Scotland. So yeah, it's quite something. Can they Can they do it this year? My question is it this year that they need to do it, or do they still have what it takes to do it next year? And that's the the thing that really can't be answered until we see it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And then Tala with Italy, I think obviously the progression is being made. We're seeing it where they're going from here. Like I see it like what Kieran Crowley did now. I mean, Crusaders benefiting from that. But Tala, I think for me, it says a lot about Italy to the fact that probably for the first time in a long time, in the Six Nations, where they walk into a game as favourites and get the job done.
Yeah, I think Italy had it's maybe a sign of progress that Italy had the type of game that fans of other teams would be criticizing their team for having against Italy, where you don't beat, the weaker team by maybe a more convincing margin than what they did. And that's somewhat a positive that, you would leave that game somewhat disappointed, maybe in a way, as an Italian fan, being like, we should have actually put more, 3 or 4 tries on Wales. It shouldn't have been like a one score game. Like they shouldn't have gotten that losing bonus point at all because Italy was better than them for, most of the game. Um, Big shout out. Yeah, I mean, Gonzalo Quesada has done really well to give some structure to this team. Like they play like headless chickens at times with Crowley, and that can win you some games, but this is a model that will hopefully make them consistent. On Saturday, I was really impressed by Lorenzo Canoni. I think he had a fantastic game. He was just everywhere, with his carrying. He was top for tackles. He made 3 turnovers, which was ridiculous. Like he was absolutely, doing the business for them. And again, it was a game in the rain, and you need that person that can just carry and just get it over the advantage line and set up the platform for the team in the next phase. And big shout out to the Italian forwards. I think when Sean and I did that preview, I was really not sure about, what Simone Ferrari is able to do in the scrum. Are they, are they able to have a scrum that is strong enough to put them in games? And they really tore apart the Welsh scrum. And that was the one somewhat positive for Wales last week, is that their scrum wasn't being torn apart by Tony and co. And Wales did come back, to be fair. Like when Nicky Smith came in, and obviously Nicky Smith is a fantastic scrummager. Like they did come back, but I think they have the front eight. Like if now they're able to at least hold their ground against most scrums in the world, they just will now have to find those next level of players. They obviously Luca Rizzoli is their reserved loose head, and he's still 22, so he'll still need to learn learn the trade there. So the only question, or the only sort of worry I have about Italy was the attack wasn't really as good as it could be, and that's now been 2 games in a row where they've essentially scored only 2 tries. One through an intercept from breaks, and one, I guess, from like a 8-9-14 move. And yeah, you're just like wondering, they have gained a lot with Casada, but have they lost that ability for their backline to really combine with each other and to really open up defenses? So yeah, maybe I'm a bit unfair because it was a game in the rain and it was a must-win for Italy. I mean, if Italy loses this game, then the Six Nations is a failure, regardless of what happens, almost regardless of what happens. But yeah, I think Italy, they have the hardest part of their tournament coming up, playing England, um, France, and Ireland. And England, they're playing at Twickenham. For them to at least be, I think, competitive in those games, they need to keep on doing what they're doing at the scrum. They need to still have, that aggressive defense that they've been having for the past 2 weekends. They've really been putting people on their bums, and they really have been, defending quite aggressively. And that will obviously just, that's obviously going to be a big positive and a way to disrupt, these really good sides. But they also can't just allow like the amount of clean breaks that they did against Scotland on the other hand as well. Like their defense out wide has just been founding in some places. But yeah, the one thing I want to really watch out for, because yeah, they'll probably still, even if their defense is excellent, they'll probably still concede 4+ tries against those 3 teams. Can they get themselves to score 2 or 3 tries and to keep the game tight in the first 60 minutes before their bench comes on? Can they get Brexham and Oncello playing well together, get the ball to Kapuotso, or get the ball to Ioane? Like, those are the things I'll be watching for next week.
One thing I will say is Capuazzo must not play 15. I think one thing is clear: he's better out on the wing. Now they've got options at 15. I just think he's. I don't say. I mean, the way I said that sounded like it was a bad thing. He's just way better on the wing. I think he's a better finisher. He's more competitive there. That's where he must play for me.
No, I agree. I do love him. I do love Kapoata on the wing. But before we wrap, let's get to our last side. I think this is a very simple question. Is Wales ever going to win a rugby game again, Tyler?
The Rugby Europe Championship is happening right now. I think Switzerland could give Wales a game right now, to be honest. And I mean, they just shipped 100 to Georgia. Here, I don't know what's the positive for Wales right now. Like, it's getting to that point where you're just like, okay, it's
Jack
not
Morgan.
getting better. What's the positive?
Jack Morgan, pretty much.
Okay,
The other
Jack Morgan's been
positive,
great.
the other positive is they've been preparing themselves for rounds 3, 4, and 5 because this is where they get to win the Triple Crown.
The Triple Crown's still on. That is technically true, yes. It isn't on for England and Scotland, for example. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few things. Like you said, Jack Morgan. I think Nicky Smith has been really good in the scrum. I'm already starting to struggle. I mean, all of the experienced players they brought back, the Falataus, the Williams, the Josh Adams. Okay, Liam Williams didn't play this weekend. I don't think they've added that much to the team. It's not like they've played and it's like, oh, okay, cool. They've brought at least some level of stability and, you know, it's given some platform for the younger players. It's now that, I mean, we talked about this, Sean. It's now that either or of like, you're not really blooding in some youngsters in certain positions because, you Warren Gatland, you don't have really much theory behind your selections. A Cam Winnett is not going to play at 15, even though he was great last year. A Dan Edwards is not going to start at 10 because you want to force Ben Thomas to play 10, even though he's doesn't play 10 for Cardiff. Um, you know, you're going to be playing like Will Rowlands, even though he's still off form, I think, and still struggling and has a bit of Rassingitis. Um, I I don't know what the good things are that Wales can take out of these first 2 games. At least they scored a try and got some points, and they have a bonus point to show for their efforts. They're not gonna. I don't think they'll win. I said they'd win a Six Nations game against England. At the end, I thought, okay, they might be able to catch England. England doesn't. Maybe they're out of the contention by the end, and they just catch them on a good day in the Millennium Stadium. But it's I don't know. It's not looking good, bruv. It is not looking good.
No, definitely not. And Sharky, last thing on Wales. Do you think surely end of Six Nations, Gatland? I mean, it's got to end now. Like, I understand obviously the
Cooks,
money
where's the
probably.
money coming from? Are you paying Gatland off?
No, but I mean, someone's got to give. Surely, where's the guy that paid for Sia to come back from France? I think he must find a way. Surely, Sharky,
You got
someone's got to give you.
it's they're making the thing is they're making bad decisions. Like Ben Thomas, the best I've seen of him this Six Nations is when he's playing 12. And funny thing, I don't know if you guys know this, but he doesn't actually play 10 at club. He only plays 12. Who would have thought?
Only for
But
Wales he plays again.
yeah, like it's just bad decisions. Like Anscombe at 10, Thomas at 12 sounds amazing. Llewellyn at 13, Tompkins at 13 even maybe. Like there are options, like they're making bad decisions. When there was I'm just going to have to remind myself, but when there was a head injury, there was an issue in the game, and they had the opportunity to make make a substitution. It was an HIA,
It
and
was
they made a
Tompkins
stupid
out.
one.
Yeah.
Yes, Nick Tompkins at 13, who probably plays 12. He had to go off for HIA. Instead of bringing Dan Edwards on, they brought on a winger.
Hathaway.
Like, I don't understand. Like, they're making stupid, silly decisions. And that's the frustrating thing. And it's like it's not even one game, it's like all the time. So to answer your question, I expected him to have been gone already. And I don't it to me it looks like he's aged like 50 years in the last 2 months.
Shame.
He doesn't he just I don't even think he cares about it. And well, it was a year ago, right, where he went and offered his resignation and they said no, you must stay. Like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be there. I don't know why he's still there. Surely he can go if he wants. Like it's just not in a good space. I really thought he'd be gone a long time ago. By the end of the I don't think they'll change him during the Six Nations if they haven't changed him yet. But yeah, it's just such a weird space. And the thing is I tweeted it on the weekend, is he will be remembered for this. He will be remembered for this time that he took over Wales in the second stint, not the 4 Six Nations he won and 2 Grand Slams or 3 Grand Slams. Forgive me if I got the number wrong. Not for being like a great Lions coach. Like that's not going to happen. It's just going to be remembered for taking Wales on the longest losing streak in the history of professional sports.
That's a tough way to sort of be remembered. But that's our Six Nations chat. Before we wrap, some big rugby happening this weekend. We've got Super Rugby is coming back. URC Derby's Origin Week. So I think it's still quite a bit of rugby coming on. If you look at the URC, we've got 2 massive derbies: Lions, Stormers, and then Bulls versus Sharks. We've also got, it's a full slate: Edinburgh playing Zebra, Ospreys playing Leinster, Benetton taking on Ulster, Munster Scarlets, Connacht Cardiff and versus Cardiff. Then on Sunday, Dragons versus Glasgow. But I think obviously all eyes will be on the SA derbies because they'll be similar to full strength. Quickly, Sharky, Lions, Stormers. Who you got winning there?
Oh, I'd love the Lions to win it. I don't think they will. We need to dedicate a whole pod on its own to like Sanele Nohamba being released early. Like what's going down there? Like why hasn't he played? But yeah, very weird. I don't know with the Stormers. Like I really don't know. I don't know what they can do. They've got the ability to pull it out. Lions. Ringo, I love you.
Tala? Who you got?
Yeah, I think it will be the Stormers, just by a bit. Yeah, hear what Sean is saying. I also think, yeah, I mean, from what I understand with the Noamba situation, I mean, obviously it's Noamba just one capitalizing on a good opportunity for him, and good luck to him. I mean, all the best. But yeah, I think maybe there wasn't really that happiness about the rotation situation. So yeah, I do think they lose something because Moni van den Berg is great. Sam France is still really young and still learning the ropes. Even Kate Follett is still learning the ropes at 10. So yeah, I think that's maybe where the Lions, that's going to be the place where the Lions are losing out on. So yeah, I think Stormers sneak that out. Big game for both of them because they're outside looking in the top eight. Both of them need to start getting on a run with, the South African teams have the majority of their games in South Africa for the next few months. It needs to start now with, okay, you picking up wins.
Yeah, but it is a tough one. I've got the Stormers. I think the Stormers eventually going to win a game away from home, and I think it'll be on Saturday. And then Bulls Sharks. Teller. I mean, obviously, you got to go Bulls.
Well, obvious, yeah. I mean, you don't even have to go to me. I think also there's a big revenge factor because they really, like I said, shouldn't have lost in Durban. Yeah, and I mean, Sharks also have a few, I don't think certain players are still back. Like, I don't know if Etzebeth will come back yet. Mapimpi is banned for gouging. Like, yeah, there's a few things. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully we can survive one more week of Villy LaRue playing 10. But yeah, I would back the Bulls to win.
Who do you got,
Sharks
Sharky?
are going to win it. Sharks.
Oh, Sharky. I wish I had your faith. I think Bulls at home. I think Bulls going to take it, but it's going to be a good weekend. But we also got Super Rugby starting.
Gents?
Sharky, so you want to give a quick fantasy shout out for Super Rugby?
Yes, go for it, Sean.
Yes. So we actually have well, by we I mean I decided to sign up for it. We signed up for the Six Nations Fantasy, so we on that. I know we're 2 rounds in, but have a little squiz. And Super Rugby Fantasy, so you can check our social media. So we've got a Twitter link on there. On Twitter, we put a link up there. Come join the fantasy. I remember playing fantasy rugby many years ago. I distinctly remember sitting down probably for 2 hours every Thursday trying to strategically put my team together before the Super Rugby got underway back in the day. And then they changed formats and I got out of it. But I'm back in it. So search Rugby Bits, come join our pool or whatever it is and have some fun.
Yeah, shout out to
No.
Andre Taylor. Like when I was in high school, he was the player to have in those days.
Deep.
Do you
I'm
know
definitely. I'm
do you know my claim to fame? Peter Hewitt, he played for the Waratahs. I I remember picking my team and I had to make I ran was running out of budget and I picked Peter Hewitt. It was his debut season for the Waratahs and he played on the wing and at fullback. But what I didn't realize, and many people didn't realize, is that he kicked for them as well. So he was in my team from the start of the season until the end of the season and earned me Lang points.
No, I remember Ardis Avia was always my fantasy guy, and I'm gonna stick to him. So I think I must put my side together, and I'm
Gents,
actually for yeah.
one question before we end. Who's your player of the tournament so far in the Six Nations? I think I'd probably go Tom Curry. What do you think?
That's a tough one. I think Tom Curry is up there. I've also got James Lowe as well. I think James Lowe's also been very
Yeah,
good.
fair. Fair.
Tom Curry, but Kalen Doris.
Yeah,
Kalen
Doris. I
Doris
mean,
has been
That's never the
incredible.
wrong answer.
How good
Kellen
has
Doris
Jack
is
Conan been? Jack Conan,
yeah.
but it's a Lions here, hey? It's a Lions here, so you know what he's going to do. He's like, screw you guys, I'm starting every test in Australia.
Nah, but Doris is also reaching that point where like it's that the properly world class, right? Where you're like, he's so good. You don't. He's 7 or 8 out of 10. He's like other people's 9 or out of
Yes,
10 performance. You sort of just like brush it off. You're like, oh, Doris, good again in the weekend,
again.
and you actually like underestimate how the level he's operating on. No, he was. I thought he was sensational as well. I think James Lowe's has been another level. I mean, especially coming back from injury. But we do got a wrap. Nice little monster pod as you get back from our bye, but we will be back next week as we discuss SA Derby, Super Rugby, and also we've got Six Nations coming up the week after. So there's still a lot going on. Maybe Warren Gatland could be fired. Who knows? Maybe the Wallabies could have found a coach by the time we get back next week. We know Rassie will be tweeting, but make sure you guys listen to Rugby Bits on all your podcast platforms, and we can't wait to see you guys and see you and chat to you guys next week. Tyler, Sean, it's been a blast. Cheers, guys.
Bye.